Hi everyone. This is for if you just need to look at the lesson that we did for lesson 1-3, solving equations again, or if you missed class, this is so that you can go ahead and have the information that you missed in there. So we're going over solving equations. This should be a review for you. I know it's been a while since we've been in the classroom, so it's kind of easing into a couple things. So we're going to go ahead and just get started. To take notes at any time, go ahead and just pause the video. For lengthwise, I'm going to give you about 5 seconds, tell you to pause, and then I'm going to move on. So again, to take notes, pause as needed, or rewind as needed as well. But go ahead and just pause when you need to take the notes, and we'll just move on from there. All right, so we're going to have writing also mathematical expressions from a sentence, so that we know exactly what we're talking about. So here we have a is less than a number, 7 is less than a number, so what that would look like in a mathematical expression is just n minus 7. So less here means to go ahead and subtract from a number. Another example we have is the square of a number decreased by the product of 5 and the number. So this is, the square here tells us that we have an exponent of 2. The decrease means to subtract, product means to multiply. So x squared minus 5x would be the mathematical expression of this problem or this sentence. And as a reminder, you should be taking notes. So like I have the notes here written in here for my own personal notebook. So do make sure you do take notes. It is a good reference to have later on. So go ahead and pause the video if you need time to go ahead and copy this down. All right, so next we have an algebraic expression represent the verbal expression 6 more than a number. So this is a you try, so go ahead and pause and see if you can work this out and then check your answer. 3, 2, 1. All right, so if you worked it out and you got b x plus 6, you are correct. The 6 more tells us that we're going to be adding, so that tells me I'm going to pick B. A would have been a product of 6 of a number. C would have been raised to the power of 6 or the 6th power. D would have been a number 6 less than a number. So we have another you try. We have write in an algebraic expression to represent the verbal expression 2 less than the cube of a number. So go ahead and pause the video and work this out on your own. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so if you worked it out on your own and you got a x cubed minus 2, that is great. The 2 less here tells us we're going to subtract. So that should have at least narrowed it down to A and C. The cube of a number tells us we're raising it to the power of 3. So remember, cubing is to the power of 3, squaring to the power of 2, and pretty much after 3, we just say to the power of 4 or to the 4th power. And so that's why it is not C, is because the exponent is wrong. All right, so here we have writing mathematical expressions, or writing sentences from expressions, so we're going the opposite route, so that you do understand what we're actually asking for. So here we have 6 equals negative 5 plus x. This is saying 6 is equal to negative 5 plus a number. We don't know what that number is, it's just a number. Another example would be 7y minus 2 equals 19. That would be 7 times a number minus 2 is 19, is another way of looking at it. And again, go ahead and pause the video if you need time to copy this down. So we have another you try. So what is a verbal sentence that represents the equation n minus 3 equals 7? Go ahead and pause the video and try it on your own and then check your answer. All right, so we have n minus 3 equals 7. So I know I should finish off with the word is 7 because it equals 7. Knowing that, I should cross out D. I have a minus sign, so that should tell me I'm looking for a difference and not a sum. Sum means addition or to add, so that crosses out my answer choice of B. And now I'm left with either A or C, and they are very, and I mean very similar. So A says the difference of a number and 3 is 7, and then C says the difference of 3 and a number is 7. In this case, it does matter the order you say it because we do subtraction. The order does matter, such as 5 minus 2 is 3 is not the same thing as saying 2 minus 5, because that would be negative 3. So in this case, because our unknown comes first, we need to say the unknown first. So the difference of a number and 3 is 7. And that is the difference versus C is saying C minus N is 7. So that does matter. And again, because subtraction, we do especially care the order it's written. Our next U-try is what is a verbal sentence that represents the equation 5 equals 2 plus x. So go ahead and pause the video and then try it on your own and come back and see if you got the correct answer. All right, so hopefully you worked it out, and we have 5 is equal to, and notice that is the first force in words in each of the sentences, and we have 2 plus x. So that plus tells me we're looking for a sum, and the only one that has the word sum in it is D. You could also see 2 is increased by a number, would be another way to look at it, but that is also not an option. So A says difference, that tells me subtraction. Twice the number tells me we are multiplying. And then quotient tells me we are dividing. So my only answer that even possibly can be working is D because it has the word sum. Okay, next we have the example solve m minus 5.48 equals 0.02. So we're going to solve for m. So we're going to go ahead and use inverse operations here. So we're going to have to cancel out the 5.48, we need to go ahead and add 5.48 to both sides because we are subtracting originally. So when we add and we're going to simplify that, we get m equals 5.5. And once we have isolated our variable, we are actually done. But what you should always go and do is always go check your work and make sure you didn't make a slight calculation error. Because you could have the right steps, but maybe you added wrong is also always a possibility. So always go back and double check. So we're going to do that here. We're going to substitute in 5.5 for our m value. And we're going to go ahead and check it, and we do get that 0.02 equals 0.02. So our answer is 5.5. Again, if you need time to go ahead and write this down, please go ahead and pause the video and then continue once you have finished writing. I will give you about 5 seconds before I move on to the next slide. All right, so let's take a look at our next slide. We have now solve 18 equals 1/2 t. So what we need to do here is we need to isolate the variable t. To do that, we're going to actually multiply by the inverse of 1/2, which is, to do that with a fraction, you invert it. So if you look at inverse and invert, they both start with INVER. So that works out really great. We're going to flip 1/2 to be 2 over 1. And then we're going to multiply. And you'll notice that the numerator and the denominator will reduce out to 1 on t. And then we're going to do 2 over 1, which is the same thing as just 2 times 18 to get 36. And again, you should always check your work, which is what we're going to go ahead and do here. We're going to substitute 36 in, and we find that it works. So yes, our answer is 36. Again, go ahead and pause the video if you need time to write this down, and then we'll move forward. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So here is your U-try. Solve what is the solution to the x plus 5 equals 3? Again, please go ahead and pause before we go ahead and move forward and try this on your own so you can check your work. I'm going to go ahead and give you 5 seconds before we go ahead and go over the answer. All right, so hopefully you tried it on your own. So we're just going to go over it. We have x plus 5 equals 3. So it's always good to, especially when it looks like a very simple one, to maybe write it down. Take a moment to actually look at the question, because I know you could glance at this and be like, Miss, I know the answer. So, but some people make the biggest mistakes when they work too fast. So do take a moment to look at what they actually are trying to do. So we're going to go ahead here and subtract 5 from both sides, because that is the inverse of addition is subtraction. When we do that, we cancel out, and we're left with just x here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to do 3 minus 5, and I'm taking away a larger number, so that tells me my answer is going to be negative. So the answer is going to be negative 2. And so in my multiple choice, I would pick B, negative 2. All right, your next you-try question is, what is the solution to the equation 2/3 x equals 10? Again, go ahead and pause the video, try it on your own, and then come back and check your work. So I'm going to get about 5 seconds before we start going over the problem. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so hopefully you took a chance to try it on your own. We're going to go ahead and go over it together now. So we're going to take our 2/3 x, and we're going to multiply by the inverse of what we're multiplying x by, which is going to be 3/2. So we're going to divide 10 by 1, because anything can be written as a fraction. All our numbers can be written as a fraction. So 10 is the same thing as saying 10 divided by, or 10 over 1. Don't be scared of fractions. They're actually they're one of the best things you can use. They're very concise, and the rules just stay the same no matter what. It's a lot easier to actually work with fractions than it is with decimals. Don't be afraid of them. They work out really nicely. So when we have here our fractions reduce out to 1, so they cancel each other out. Over here, we're going to multiply across, because that's how we multiply fractions. So we're going to get 30, because 10 times 3 is 30, and then over 2, because 1 times 2 is 2. And now I can simplify this even further, and get, we want to leave it as a fraction, we would get 15 over 1, which is the same thing as just saying 15. So our answer is C, 15. And you should go check your work and plug it in, double be sure. But for this, we did check it that way, so the answer is C for 15. All right, our next example is solve 53 equals 3 times y minus 2 minus 2 times 3y minus 1. So one of the things here we should always do, that I like doing when we're working problems like this, is to go ahead and distribute and draw those arrows, so I make sure I remember we are distributing to everything in there. So such as this here, the negative 2 is going to go both to the 3y and to the negative 1. And it's important to remember you're multiplying the whole number negative 2. Here we're multiplying by 3. And so when we do that, we're going to get 3 times y, which is 3y, 3 times negative 2, which is negative 6, negative 2 times 3y gets me negative 6y, and then negative 2 times negative 1 gets me positive 2. So as a reminder, two negatives make a positive when you are multiplying or dividing. So once we go ahead and distribute our 3 and negative 2, we're now going to combine like terms. So like terms mean they have the same variable with the same kind of exponent, or they're both constants. So in this case, we have 3y minus 6y to get negative 3y, and negative 6 plus 2 to get negative 4. And now we're going to go ahead and add 4 to both sides, because I want to do the inverse of what we have here. And we're going to get 57 equals negative 3y. We're now going to divide by negative 3 on both sides. And since we're dividing a positive by a negative, I'm going to get a negative answer. And in this case, it's negative 19. So again, pause the video if you need some time to go ahead and write this down. It is very good to have in your notes to have reference later on. All right, next we have our you try. So I want you to go ahead and try to determine what the solution to 25 equals 2x plus 2 minus 5 times 2x plus 1. Go ahead and try it on your own, and then pause the video and then unpause and see what, come back and check your work. All right, so hopefully you tried it on your own. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is we're going to go ahead and distribute. Again, I like drawing those arrows so I remember that I need to distribute to everything inside the parentheses. So we're going to bring down that 25 because we're not going to touch it until we pretty much are closer to the end. We're going to do 3 times 2x, which gets us 6x. We're going to do 3 times 2 to get positive 6. And then I'm going to do negative 5 times 2x to get negative 10x. And negative 5 times positive 1 gets me negative 5. And again, I'm going to bring down my 25. We're not touching it yet. All right, so we're going to combine like terms. So we're going to do 6x minus 10x to get negative 4x. And then we're going to do 6 minus 5 to get positive 1. And then by inverse operations, we're going to subtract 1. From both sides. These ones cancel out, and we're left with positive 24 equals negative 4x. My inverse operation we're going to do now is divide by negative 4. On both sides. And here, since we're dividing in positive by negative, we're going to get a negative answer. Negative 24 divided by negative 4 is going to be negative 6. And we get equals x because these 4's are going to cancel out. And so our answer is going to be A, negative 6. If you need time to go ahead and pause this so you can copy the work down or to double check yours, go ahead and take that moment. We're going to move on to our next question, our next example. So we have the formula for the surface area S of a cone is S equals pi RL plus pi R squared, where L is the slant height of the cone and R is the radius of the base. So solve the formula for L. all they want here is for you to isolate L to get it in terms L equals yada, yada, yada. I don't care what yada, yada, yada is. It can still have letters. It can be a number. In this case, it's still going to have variables in it as well as pi. So we're going to take our original formula, S equals pi RL plus pi r squared. And we're going to subtract pi r squared from both sides. That way we go ahead and get rid of it over here. And we have now moved it over to the left-hand side. We are then going ahead and simplify. And we get S minus pi r squared equals pi RL. Now to get this L by itself, we need to divide by what's multiplying by it. So we're going to divide both sides by pi r so that we can isolate L. Now looking at this, I know a lot of people really want to cancel out pi r here on top and bottom in the numerator and denominator, but you can't do that because you're dividing this whole expression by pi r, and since pi r is not part of S, you can't cancel out pi r. So you have to leave it in the denominator as is, as well as in the numerator as is. So they do not cancel out. So this is as simple as it's going to get. So L is equal to S minus pi r squared all over pi r. Again, if you need a moment to write this down, go ahead and pause the video before you move on to the next slide. All right, so here is our U-try for this problem. The formula for the perimeter of a rectangle is pi equals 2L plus 2W, where P is the perimeter, L is the length, and W is the width of the rectangle. What is this formula solved for W? So again, go ahead and try this on your own before we go over the answer. Here are your answer choices. They are all different. They may look very similar, but they are all extremely different at the same time. So go ahead and pause the video before you go ahead and go over this question. Right, so hopefully you tried it on your own. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So we're going to have P equals 2L plus 2W. So we're going to go ahead and remove L from the right-hand side because we are solving for W. So we're going to subtract 2L from both sides. And when you're doing this, do make sure you write your L so that it looks either like an L for sure, either in the cursive L form, or you write a capital L. That way you make sure you know you're working with an L and not the number 1. So that usually tends to be a mistake here I see is people confuse what they actually wrote down and work out different things. So we get P minus 2L equals 2W. So we're going to divide by 2 because the inverse of multiplying is dividing. And so here again, on this side, I can cancel out the 2's because this is a single term that works. Over here, we cannot cancel the 2's out because this is an expression that's getting divided in 2. So we have to go ahead and leave it as P minus 2L all over 2 equals W. And if you look at that, we see the answer is C. To go over the other answers, A, they have the plus sign, so that's why this is wrong. Here in B, we forgot to divide by 2. And here in D, you did divide the P in half, but they forgot to divide the 2L in half. So that's why that does not work. And that actually is the end of the notes. Again, go ahead and pause it if you need more time to go ahead and write it down or to copy down the work to go over the answer. But that is the end of lesson 1-3.